And Brendan, like you were in, not to give away your age, but you've been in quite a long time. And when around, we're around the Good Friday Agreement, and the release of prisoners was very contentious at the time. The notion that we would be releasing people, and we've seen now Fianna Fáil especially very strongly against the amnesty. And do you think, it is the same type of thing, the same theme, the kind of emotion of it? Like, can you even buy into the argument that we have released people, so maybe we shouldn't be trying people?
No, as Linda said, different scene altogether. The amnesty proposals are reprehensible. The half-baked proposals we listened to today are equally reprehensible. I think I hadn't the opportunity to listen to much of the detail. But what's happening is the victims, it's not victim-centred. It's actually what I heard about today was perpetrator-centred. The perpetrators will decide if I'll go forward and tell my story. That will be equal beneficial to the murderers from the paramilitary organisations and to the murderers from the state forces. So here we could have a buy-in from two conflicting sides if what the small bit of detail and listening to it today. So I think what's announced today is not good enough either. There has to be a judicial process. I know families that have campaigned for decades and decades. They're not out for vengeance. They don't even want to see, in some instances, people put into jail. They want to get the truth. Mm-hmm. So here, the proposals that were announced by Mr. Johnston and some members of his government would say to those victims and families of victims and to people who've been advocacy and representative groups, your work for decades, forget about it. There's never going to be a chance of getting the truth. A lot of these families know very, very well, and they accept that it's going to be very hard to get the truth, never mind get a conviction. But the idea of stopping it and saying that people who carried out murder, be it on behalf of a state or be behalf of a paramilitary organisation, under no circumstances should they have an amnesty of any sort.
Mm-hmm. And just on that, these are really contentious kind of issues, and you feel sometimes that, for all the relationships that we've built and the time has moved on, we're getting more and more polarised. And I just wanted to turn to you in terms of, we're talking about the election last week, and we saw, it was a great day out for Sinn Féin and a great day out for the Alliance, and then less so for the DUP and yourselves. Do you yourself think that the North is becoming more polarised, or what do you put down to, it's not even Sinn Féin didn't gain any votes, but they consolidated very much their vote, and they are now the biggest party. Do you put that down to polarisation? Do you put that down to your party, maybe, I don't know, having a bit of an identity crisis, or the nationalist people moving towards Sinn Féin or Alliance? What do you kind of put that down to?
It's a big question, and still feeling a bit sore having not won my seat. But I just on the last point, I'm a criminal defence lawyer was my first career, and so I represented people across the spectrum, from armed forces to paramilitaries to victims groups and families, and just really echo what Brendan said. Every one of them was united in one thing: they wanted truth and that acknowledgement, and for a fair judicial process to take place. So I completely agree. If we're going to achieve reconciliation, that is essential. To answer the question about the election, yes, I suppose the first thing is I'm not sure I'd agree that we've become more polarised. I think what you had was a consolidation around the DUP, Sinn Féin and Alliance. I think there was very much a sense within the Nationalist Republican community that this was a historic election around seeing Sinn Féin take the First Minister's position, albeit that it is a joint office, and as the old adage goes, one can't order a paperclip without the consent of the other. But nevertheless, there was, and it's undeniable, a symbolism in Sinn Féin topping the poll, as it were. And I have to say, being on the doorsteps, albeit there was a small small National Republican community in my constituency, there was certainly that feedback that people wanted to send a message to the DUP. There was an anger within even moderate nationalism, who would probably traditionally have supported the SDLP, saying we want to send a message to the DUP, and the way they wanted to do that was to support Sinn Féin. I also think it's important to acknowledge that I think Sinn Féin ran a very effective campaign in this election. The DUP was really, I think, quite lucky to sustain the number of seats that they did, given sort of miscalculations. And I have to say, because there was a lot of anger on the doorsteps towards the DUP, so I'm surprised they did nearly as well as they did. I think they were lucky that whilst the TUV got, Traditional Unionist Voice got a lot of votes, it didn't actually affect their seats. And then you had this, I think what happened was people who wanted to reject, as it were, the green and orange politics felt that the only place to go in this election was the alliance. And they were helped also. I mean, they have had a surge for a number of years, but I think there were also, Rose and I were talking about an opinion poll which came out a number of days before the election, which suggested that they might come in equal to the DUP. And I think that spurred a lot of people in the middle, again, people who may have voted SDLP or UUP, to go to Alliance First Preference. My party, it was a very difficult election for us. We lost 4 seats, and a lot of candidates, myself, didn't get elected. We suffered from both sides, from the Sinn Féin support and also from the surge towards alliance. And I think as a political party, we have work to do now to become relevant, to make the position of the Social Democratic and Labour Party relevant again in Northern Irish politics, what it means to be a social democrat. Being a party that's committed to reconciliation, being a party that's committed to building a truly reconciled society and a non-sectarian society, and becoming relevant again, I think is going to be the big challenge for the SDLP going forward.